Hello and welcome. Tonight we journey to the American frontier, to a time of log cabins and candlelight, and to a story that has been passed down for over 200 years. This is not just another ghost story. It is a case so well documented, so widely witnessed, and so violent that it has been cited as the only instance in United States history where a death was officially attributed to a supernatural entity. It is a story that terrified a future president and gave a name and a voice to the darkness. This is the definitive deep dive into the Bell Witch haunting. Our story begins in 1817 in the tranquil settlement of Red River, Tennessee, an area that would later become the town of Adams. John Bell Sr. was the picture of a successful frontier farmer. He was a respected church elder, a prosperous landowner, and the patriarch of a large, hard-working family. He lived with his wife, Lucy, and their children in a large log cabin on a sprawling 320-acre farm. Their life was peaceful, ordinary, and deeply rooted in their community. But in the summer of that year, a shadow began to fall over their idyllic existence. It started subtly. One evening, while walking through his cornfield, John Bell encountered a bizarre animal that would defy all description. It had the body of a dog, but the head of a rabbit. He shot at the strange creature, but it vanished. This was the first omen. Soon after, the disturbances moved inside the house. The family began to hear strange, faint noises at night, a gentle knocking on the walls, the sound of gnawing on the bedposts, of chains being dragged across the wooden floors, of wings beating against the ceiling. At first, they dismissed it as rats or the wind, the common sounds of a country home. But the activity grew bolder and more specific. The faint whispers evolved into the sound of a woman crying, then singing hymns in a voice of ethereal beauty. The blankets and pillows would be violently ripped from the children's beds in the middle of the night by an unseen force. The children, particularly the youngest daughter, 12-year-old Betsy, began to complain of being slapped and pinched by an invisible hand. The attacks on Betsy became increasingly violent. Her hair would be pulled, her cheeks would turn bright red from unseen slaps, and she would be thrown into violent convulsions, her body contorting as if under the control of a malevolent puppeteer. Terrified and ashamed, John Bell initially swore his family to secrecy. But as the torment escalated, he could no longer bear it alone. He confided in his closest friend and neighbor, James Johnston. Johnston, a skeptic, agreed to spend the night. He witnessed the blankets being thrown, he heard the disembodied voices, and he was convinced. A committee of investigation was formed, comprised of respected members of the community, to witness and attempt to debunk the phenomena. They came as skeptics and left as believers. The Bell family's private hell had become a public spectacle. The entity, now seemingly energized by the attention, began to speak openly. It developed a clear, powerful voice, or rather multiple voices. It could whisper, it could shout, it could sing with perfect pitch. It could carry on intelligent, lengthy conversations with multiple people at once. It demonstrated an uncanny, clairvoyant knowledge, revealing the deepest secrets of the neighbors and accurately predicting future events. When asked who or what it was, it gave a chilling, if inconsistent, answer. It claimed it was the spirit of a woman named Kate Batts, a former neighbor of the Bells whom John Bell had allegedly cheated in a land deal. The spirit declared that she was a witch and had returned for her revenge. From that moment on, the entity was known as Kate, the Bell Witch. The legend of the Bell Witch spread like wildfire, attracting visitors from hundreds of miles away. The Bell cabin became an unlikely tourist destination. Kate seemed to relish the audience. She was a performer with a personality, witty, intelligent, profane, and profoundly malevolent. She would engage in theological debates with visiting preachers, often quoting scripture verbatim to trip them up, only to end the conversation with a string of curses. The haunting became so famous that it attracted the attention of one of the most powerful men in Tennessee, a celebrated war hero and future President of the United States, General Andrew Jackson. Intrigued and skeptical, Jackson assembled a group of his toughest men, including a self-proclaimed witch tamer, and journeyed to the Bell Farm in 1819 to confront the entity. According to the legend, the strangeness began before they even reached the cabin. As their wagon approached the property, it came to a sudden, complete stop. The horses strained, but the wagon was held fast by an unseen force. After a frustrating struggle, an exasperated Jackson allegedly exclaimed, "By the eternal, boys, it's the witch!" A disembodied voice then laughed from the woods, announcing, "All right, General, let the wagon proceed. I will see you again tonight." The invisible force released its grip, and the wagon moved on. That night in the Bell's cabin was one of terror. The witch focused her attention on Jackson's witch tamer, who had boasted he could handle any spirit. Kate verbally abused him, then began to physically assault him with a barrage of slaps, pinches, and pokes, all delivered by an invisible hand. The man, utterly terrified, begged Jackson to let him leave. The rest of the men were subjected to similar torment. By the next morning, a shaken and defeated Andrew Jackson and his men had fled the farm. He would later be quoted as saying, "I would rather fight the entire British Army than to deal with the Bell Witch." While Kate tormented the entire family and entertained visitors, her primary, obsessive focus was twofold: to prevent the marriage of Betsy Bell to a young man named Joshua Gardner, whom Betsy loved, and to bring about the death of John Bell Sr. Her attacks on Betsy were relentless, especially when Joshua Gardner was present, and her vendetta against John Bell was a slow, torturous campaign of attrition. She would curse him with a deafening voice that only he could hear. She would physically assault him, causing him to have seizures and strange fits that left his face paralyzed and his tongue swollen. She openly and repeatedly proclaimed her ultimate goal: "I am determined to haunt and torment old Jack Bell as long as he lives." By 1820, John Bell's health had completely deteriorated under the relentless supernatural assault. In December of that year, he fell into a stupor and could not be roused. The family, searching for his medicine, found a strange, smoky vial in the medicine cabinet that no one recognized. The witch's voice boomed through the house, proudly announcing that she had placed it there. Suspicious, the family tested a drop of the strange liquid on the family cat, which immediately went into convulsions and died. The voice of Kate was then heard to cackle, "I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night, and that will fix him." John Bell Sr. died the next day, on December 20th, 1820. The death was so infamous and the circumstances so widely witnessed that the state of Tennessee has acknowledged it in its historical records as a death caused by a supernatural entity, the only such case in American history. The entity's malice did not end with his death. During John Bell's funeral, as mourners sang hymns, the witch's voice was heard joining in, loudly and joyfully singing bawdy drinking songs until the grieving family was forced to leave the graveside. With her primary target gone, Kate's presence began to fade. She terrorized Betsy for a few more months until Betsy finally broke off her engagement to Joshua Gardner. After that, the witch announced that she would leave the family but would return in 7 years. According to John Bell Jr.'s account, she did return in 1828 for a brief period, before promising to visit their descendants again in 107 years, in 1935. So what was the entity that terrorized the Bell family? The most common skeptical theory is that it was an elaborate and masterful hoax. The primary suspect is often identified as Richard Powell, the local school teacher who was reportedly in love with Betsy Bell. Powell was known to be highly intelligent and had studied, and perhaps even mastered, the art of ventriloquism. The theory posits that he and Betsy conspired to create the haunting. Powell would provide the voice and the clairvoyant information, gleaned from his position as a teacher who interacted with all the local families, while Betsy would fake the physical manifestations. Their motive? To break Betsy's unwanted engagement to Joshua Gardner, which, in the end, they succeeded in doing. This theory is compelling, but it struggles to explain how a hoax could have been maintained for 4 years, fooling hundreds of witnesses, including a hard-nosed military man like Andrew Jackson. Another theory suggests the source was psychological. Perhaps Betsy Bell, an adolescent girl under immense stress, was the unconscious source of the phenomena, a classic poltergeist case where psychokinetic energy is projected externally. Or perhaps John Bell Sr. was not the upstanding man he appeared to be, and the haunting was a manifestation of a dark family secret, such as abuse, projected by one of the children. And then there is the supernatural explanation, the one the family and the community believed, that it was a genuine entity, a disembodied spirit, a demon, or the vengeful witch of cake bats. They believed they were under attack from a being from another world, a being with a powerful intelligence and a capacity for pure evil. The Bell Witch haunting remains one of America's most compelling and well-documented paranormal cases. The sheer volume of first-hand and second-hand witness testimony, the specificity of the entity's personality, and the famous encounter with Andrew Jackson set it apart from typical ghost stories. Whether it was the spirit of a wronged woman, a demonic entity, or a masterful deception born of a secret love, the entity known as Kate left a permanent, terrifying scar on American folklore, a chilling tale of a voice from the darkness that came to torment a family and kill a man.